That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Random Acts of Violence, the directorial debut of actor Jay Baruchel, which premiered at the 2019 Fantastic Fest and will be available to stream on Shudder as of August 20th, 2020.
Do you want to tell the story? You want me to try to do it? Okay. What is Jesse Williams' character's name?
Todd.
Okay, so Jesse Williams plays a comic book writer named Todd, and his comic book is named Slasherhead. It's about, it's loosely based on this character named the I-90 Killer. So it's like the serial killer who's hunting people off I-90. Slasherman, sorry. So he's written this comic book called Slasherman, and we find him at the end of its run. He's decided to stop writing it, and he needs to come up with the final, what do you call it? Not episode. What do you call comic books?
The final issue.
Final issue of the comic book. He's having writer's block. His girlfriend, right? That's his girlfriend?
Yeah.
Jordana Brewster. She kind of doesn't agree with his approach. She doesn't seem necessarily even like the idea of Slasher Man. She thinks it's exploitative. She thinks that we should be focusing on the victims, not the killer. We'll get into that because I think that's kind of stupid. Her dynamic with him about his work. So she's not really helping him with any new ideas. So it's decided that Todd and his girlfriend, his manager played by
Jay Baruchel, Ezra,
and Todd's assistant,
Aurora.
The four of them are going to go on a road trip.
She's an assistant and the illustrator.
Yes, and the illustrator. They're going to go on a road trip to kind of get inspiration for the final issue.
Yeah, but it's like a tour.
It's also a tour. Yeah. He's going to do book signings and radio interviews. So they make their way. The film goes into some, it makes some effort to show where they are.
The progression, yeah.
The progression, which I thought was funny because they don't actually go that far.
Well, because it starts out in Toronto.
I had to write it down because I thought it was going to actually do something and it doesn't. But yeah, they start in Toronto. Then the next time that we see it, they're in America. And then Jefferson County, then Albany. And then they go back to Toronto. So, it's short-lived because we'll explain why. But anyway, they start on their tour and the first stop is a radio interview. And it turns out the person interviewing Todd, one of his childhood friends was killed by the I-90 Killer. So he does not like Slasher Man. He doesn't like the kind of work Todd does. He thinks it's not respecting the victims. So they have a really awkward interview. And during that interview, someone calls in and just starts rambling off these numbers. 1, 12, 18. Oh, it's creepy. Todd thinks that that night at the hotel, he's thinking about it and he opens up a Bible and thinks that it's referencing a passage out of Revelations. Or Genesis, I don't know. What's the first book?
The first book is Genesis. Revelations is...
he was looking at Revelations, though.
That's the New Testament, yeah.
Oh, but then wouldn't one be... I don't know how the Bible works. Anyway, he's looking in a Bible, reading a passage, thinking that that's what this person was referencing. Cut to 3 teenagers driving on the side of... they have a flat tire. This person pulls up in a van... wanting to help them, but he looks creepy, so the kids are no, leave us alone, we're okay. This person ends up killing them, and in sewing them together, human centipede style, but it's more like a spider-looking thing. Well, we find out as Todd and his 3 compadres are driving down the interstate, they see the crime scene, and one of the law enforcement people lifts up the tarp, and we see the victims. And they're arranged in what they call a triptych because in Todd's comic book, he has a kill that looks just like that. So someone has mimicked, presumably, that killing. Okay. So now they're kind of freaked out. They go to the next stop, which is a book signing, and someone calls Todd's phone while he's actively doing the book signing, and this fool decides to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And this person's rattling off another set of numbers. So he, I think, thinks that's the Bible again. But his assistant, Aurora, she's murdered. She's decapitated. So after that, they realize, like, as the three of them are driving, Todd has this revelation that, oh, it's a reference to, because he gets another call with numbers, and he has the revelation that it's a reference to his comic book.
Mm-hmm. Because at the book signing, one of the brick top that shows up with that truck, that model.
Is Bricktop a reference to a redhead?
Yeah.
Oh. Where did that come from?
Watching that Jane Russell movie, The Revolt
that's right.
The Revolt of Mamie Stover.
That's right.
When did you become a bricktop? He has that model of the truck of the I-90 killer, and he makes a comment about how this is my religion, which is where the rhyme and reason comes from. The numbers being used.
So the second killing with the decapitation, when they look up that magazine or that comic book, it's like, oh, that mimicked another kill. So then he gets another call with more numbers, and he realizes, oh, a family is going to be killed, like in like a station wagon. So they also happen to be following a station wagon down the highway, so they think, oh my God, these people are going to be next, which I thought was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they pull up next to these random people, and they're telling them, like, pull over. And of course the people are like, fuck you, like, we're going to call the police. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the killer in his van stops them and shoots them. He's also successful in shooting...
he causes them to have a car accident. And Baruchel dies, and then he kidnaps the other two.
Kidnaps the Todd and
Kathy.
He takes them back to his lair, which is like a wrecking yard.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He's kind of toying around with them.
As one does, of course, in these scenarios.
He knocks out Todd, and then Todd wakes up back in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And then we find that in Todd's home in Toronto, in the dining room, he has the three victims, whatever their names are.
Todd and Ezra and Aurora.
Ezra, Aurora, and
Kathy.
Ezra, Aurora, and Kathy are like arranged at the dinner table.
Like the Last Supper.
They're all dead, so the one is disemboweled, the one is decapitated, the other one's just dead. With all their, like, you know, there's food all over the table that looks like human meat. Mm-hmm. It's a gruesome scene. And the killer shows up and presents himself to Todd like, hey, buddy. And then there's like a 20-minute, this film is 80 minutes, and the final 25 minutes is this, like, sort of ending.
Yeah, the climax.
The climax is very long.
It's a slow release climax.
Oh my God. But we find out, because throughout the film there are a couple devices used. There's like sort of like a cartoon relating to the graphic novel. There's also flashbacks to what we presume is Todd as a young boy.
Which that little boy was the little boy from Becky.
Oh, that's cute.
Mm-hmm.
Poor thing. He's done 2 movies that are not appropriate for him to watch. So we learned that when Todd was little, his mom, who was this lovely church-going lady, I don't know if she was in a relationship or being stalked by this man.
Yeah, it's unclear.
It's unclear, like, what their relationship was, but this man shows up at their house, like, during Christmas time, and kills Todd's mom, like, right in front of him. Presumably, he has suffered, like, some post-traumatic sort of stress from that, because it's not clear whether he blocked it out.
I think he did.
Yeah, it would make sense that he did, but also maybe a manifestation of that is this comic book that he's written, because he mentions, like, I've written thousands of kills. Mm-hmm. So Slasherman is like a long-running comic strip. Mm-hmm. So the killer admits to him that because he followed young Todd up into adulthood, that when Todd started creating the comic book, the killer stopped killing. But when he realized that Todd was having a difficult time coming up with an ending, he knew he had to come back and give him some inspiration. So this little macabre scene I created, this is for you, this is your ending, you're welcome, you can kill me now.
So this film could have been called Endings, Beginnings.
Endings, Beginnings. So the killer says, like, hey, go ahead and kill me. He hands him an old big-ass hunting knife, and Todd kills him, the end.
And says, fuck your ending.
Yeah, the end. Okay, well, what did you think of this film?
Well, it is based on a graphic novel by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, and I feel like Baruchel was trying to obviously keep that intact. I found it interesting that he cast himself in a role that he's kind of stereotyped in film anyways, an actor, like the sweet, lovable, best friend, nerdy type, because he really has nothing to do himself.
Yeah.
I liked the look of it. It was shot by Karim Hussain, who also did Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor, which I cannot wait for you to see that. I really liked it. I don't know. It started off again. I like the look. It looks sick. Everything's like these green and like snotty looking yellows. There's a scene in a gas station where it's like inside of it. It looks like everything is diseased around them.
I like the look of the film as well.
Yeah, it felt like the texture of it was as if it was a 1980s horror film. So I did appreciate that.
Well, let me go through my notes. So. I thought...
Well, I thought we were talking about positive things.
Oh, positive things? That would be it, I think, for me.
Okay.
What, do you have more positive things?
No.
So, I had said when we finished the film that it feels like it's only like 60% of what they wanted to do. So maybe due to like budget and all the other things, they weren't able to fully flush it out. Because there is a lot going on.
Thematically there are interesting things going on.
So the message of the film about like victims and like sensationalizing the killer, and because Todd uses language that I don't think it's appropriate for him to say, but I think that's the problem with our culture is like we glamorize and offer celebrity to these people who do terrible things.
Well, and really teasing apart the intersection of art versus exploitation and when is it too much? And this film seems to be saying that you can't have one without the other. Like if without the presentation, the visual presentation of violence, perhaps it would manifest in reality. It is what I took from the symbiotic relationship here.
So Jordana Brewster's character, her entire storyline is that she is working on a project that will sort of highlight all the victims. Mm-hmm. And then there's a scene where she's talking to the illustrator, Aurora, telling her, like showing her like lookbook and talking about the victims, which I found funny because she's the reality is like that's not what's interesting about these sorts of crimes, right? We want to know the motivation behind the killer and the gruesome details, and no one ever really cares about the actual victim.
Unless they're Sharon Tate or...
Perhaps, sure. But in general, we sort of are more interested in sort of the more macabre details.
Sure.
And the fear around it. And so the little speech Jordana's character gives...
Where she screams, I wrote down, "You fetishize evil!"
The messaging, I think, made sense, but I think the dialogue and the acting was crunchy.
The dialogue's very on the nose.
Yeah, so it took me out. It feels very B.
Which I don't mind.
I don't mind, but yeah, it doesn't feel fully flushed out.
And if you squint, like I thought
Jordana Brewster's turning into Demi Moore.
She looked like Demi Moore, which made me laugh because then later in the junkyard scene where they're running around trying to escape the killer, like, oh, this is like nothing but trouble in Vulcanvania.
Speaking of acting, that radio DJ in the opening, sort of the first little pit stop they make, it's a pretty big scene. Mm-hmm. I thought that person's acting was crunchy too. Mm-hmm. The first big kill, I think for a film that's, I would say is like a midnight sort of film, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's horror, it's called Random Acts of Violence. I know that part of it is probably like, it's being ironic, like,
yes,
it's not super violent, but...
Well, it's not random.
It's not random, but I think it's interesting that it is violent, but it's not as violent as I would have expected.
No, it felt like a knockoff Dean Koontz to me, the narrative, now that I think about
Dean
it.
Koontz?
He's like a Stephen King, like pulp.
What did he write that I know?
Watchers, Intensity, oh God, he's got tons of books.
Well, I was thinking, who's the man who did the Hatchet movies?
Adam Green.
I feel like if Adam Green had been asked to like do the violence part of it, then maybe it would have popped off a little more. Because the first scene with the 3 kids in the rain and the SUV, it just looked really...
There was something creepy about that when he starts stabbing that boy in the passenger side seat. That's terrifying.
Yeah, but then it turned into like, and I think again it was the acting maybe that the screaming. It just all seemed chaotic in a way that was like not.
Too often when
primal.
You're showing a lot of humans that seem to have no sense of survival.
Sure. I just think for all the films I've seen that are pretty violent and with gruesome kills, this definitely ranked a little lower. Mm-hmm. Much lower on the scale.
Sure. Well, because if you think the concept is creepy, you know, they never caught the Zodiac killer. And,
right.
You know, like Fincher's Zodiac, what if he was on the sidelines and interested in who's talking about him?
Right. That could have been the other 40% that's missing. Mm-hmm. My final note on here is Jesse Williams, who I really like, his appearance. He makes crazy eyes throughout the film that I thought was a very interesting choice. It's very, I had said originally like borderline like Faye Dunaway, Mommie Dearest.
Yeah.
But also very like Mayhem Miller, you know, that drama viral video.
I think it probably bothered you a little more than it did me. It was nice to see Jesse Williams in a lead role, but I think with the lighting and the direction, you know, the eyes...
are the nipples of the face.
That's true, Anna. But he has very
Is that House Bunny?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe I remember. Okay.
I can't either. Speaking of the Demi Moore connection, little Rumor Willis is in that too. You focus on his eyes anyway, and the distinct lighting of this. I think that you are just drawn to that more than normal because of a lot of everything going on. I don't think it's distinctly like Jesse Williams giving.
And I honored him today because I shaved my face like he has in the movie. Did you notice? I kind of trimmed this down and left my mustache. No.
You look like that often, but I didn't realize we have...
No, I don't often have more mustache than beard.
Oh, okay.
This was an homage to Todd and Random Acts of Violence. You're welcome.
Well, there you go. Yeah, so what would you give this film?
I would give it 2.5 out of 5.
I think 2.5 is fair.
Where is it streaming? Shudder?
Shudder.
Oh, if you have a Shudder subscription, I would watch it.
For sure, for 80 minutes. You know, recommend at night. 2.5 is fair.
Anything else?
No.
All right, bye.
Bye. Bye.